So, Joe, speaking of the playoff, there was some big news, pun intended, for Notre Dame. Rylie Mills, who got hurt in that Indiana game, is going to be out for the remainder of the season. You probably could shed light a little bit more on what the injury may be. But turning to the playoff and turning to Rylie Mills here, how big of a loss is it for Notre Dame, a guy that had 7.5 sacks this season for the Irish?
Yeah, when we did this preview, I was coming into the game thinking that, like, oh, Rylie Mills is available. The injury that he suffered in the game didn't look crazy significant. In 10 days, he'd be back. He's done. He's out of the mix. Notre Dame fans, I think we need to understand here, this is a huge deal. Notre Dame's path to success came off of the fact that their run defense was going up against an offensive line that had a ton of problems against a lot of teams that had competent big body defensive tackles in run blocking. They had a lot of issues. That's what we highlighted in the preview. Rylie Mills in the second half of the season, when there was a stretch where they were without Howard Cross, he was one of the best defensive tackles in the country. Yeah. He was creating like serious penetration. He was getting pressures on passing downs, and he was immovable against the run. Not having him is a problem, and it goes even deeper than that. They have dealt with a ton of injuries at different spots on their defensive line. They lost Jordan Botelho, who was an edge. They lost Abubakar Traore, who was an edge. Bryce Young stepped up and has been a good player for them, but they're having to throw in another guy, Gabriel Rubio, who isn't a primary starter. I just think that, like, the timing of this really sucks. It wouldn't surprise me, and I'm not saying that, like, boom, Notre Dame's screwed, they lose the football game, they're out of this, they're done. But if Georgia has a lot of success running the ball compared to what we were expecting, it wouldn't surprise me. And if they run the ball well, that is how Georgia wins the football game, because then there ultimately would be less pressure on Gunnar Stockton.
Well, I was literally going to ask you, because you picked Notre Dame to beat Georgia, and I was, again, going to ask, does this loss change your mindset?
It doesn't, because I'm not going to bail on my team. It's just like if you were picking LSU in a close game and there's a hope that they would win the game. I'm still sticking with it because Al Golden's a great defensive coordinator, and we just don't know what the heck's happening with Gunnar Stockton. I said this before. I don't know if Gunnar Stockton can't come into this game and play at an unreal level and take over, or if he has the first time starting jitters and makes mistakes going up against a secondary that's going to get an interception off of him. I just don't know.
So here's my thing. I've seen a lot of people talk about how big of an impact it is from a production standpoint. You can't take that away. I mean, look, Rylie Mills, 37 tackles, 9 tackles for loss, 7.5 sacks. You can't take that physicality and production away. But here's where I look at this and see that it's a massive deal for a bigger aspect. Rylie Mills has played in 61 games in college. He's been there since 2020. He's a 5-year senior. 61 games, Joe, he's played in. Brother, you don't replace that experience. So I see all of these people talking about Notre Dame could do this, and this for production. You're missing the entire point of what makes this kid very solid. It's he's played in 61 freaking football games in college. The experience factor is always a big deal. Versus when I look at Gabe Rubio, who you brought up earlier. Gabe Rubio's not a bad player and could be a very good player, and he's been there since 2021. He's played in 30 games. Joe, one guy has doubled the experience of action than his replacement. Now, of course he does. I mean, that's what starters do, right? Like, I mean, it's got to happen that way. Rylie Mills, would have been a very big piece in a Notre Dame win because of the issues that Georgia's had in the interior and exterior run games. It's a massive deal. Yeah. And I got to tell you, I'm really interested to see how Georgia attacks Notre Dame, number one, because we don't really know what a game plan from Georgia with a new quarterback looks like. I guarantee you running the football is the number one key of that game plan, though. I don't have to be a rocket scientist. I don't have to be Elon Musk. I don't have to be the college version of Elon Musk when it comes to talking football to understand Georgia's big game plan is going to be revolved around running the football, right? Like, we all know this. I see everybody talking about the production, and I agree. 7.5 sacks gone is a big deal from the position that he plays. You cannot replace 61 games played. I mean, Joe, like, this guy's what, 23, 24? Right.
I want to say he's 23, but he's like a fifth-year guy. He's been around for a
That's
minute.
my point. Like, again, you have a 23-year-old guy that is saying what exactly? Everything. There's not – I say this about players that are this old around the country. There's nothing that he hasn't seen yet. Name one thing that Rylie Mills hasn't seen.
Right.
Since a coaching change, your DC, the guy that was leading you, getting the head coaching job, losing to Marshall, losing to NIU. He's been there through all the obstacles. He is a leader on the field, and that is the biggest thing for me of what's going on here.
Yeah, I think that we're on the same page here. I'm not trying to be like doom and gloom and say Notre Dame's screwed. That's not the way that I'm
not
going
trying
at
to
this.
say that either. I'm not
right. I know you're not, and I know you're not, and but to like level set in like what you're talking about, Notre Dame fans, you can't downplay this. You just can't. You can't just think that like, well, Gabriel Rubio is a great player and he's been rotational. It's not like we're throwing another true freshman into the mix. We have to then think further down the line of, I don't even know off the top of my head, and it doesn't seem like it's been super clear of who then is filling Gabriel Rubio's role. Who are the next guys up? Because now Notre Dame is relying on a lot of young players who, albeit have been playing at a ridiculously high level, and we love getting to see Leonard Moore and Christian Gray shine to the degree, and Bryce Young step in and shine to that degree. Drake Bowen's another young player who has played at a really great level. It's nice seeing these young players be the reason for Notre Dame's success. But at a certain point, when half of your defense is inexperienced guys and you have that many freshmen on the field, a coach like Kirby Smart takes advantage of that. Right. I don't think that this leads to, as I'm reiterating, I don't think this leads to Georgia running for 200 yards and Notre Dame screwed. That's not going to happen. Their defensive success hasn't only been from Rylie Mills, but it's going to show up in third and short. It's going to show up in areas where Rylie Mills, the 300-pound, 6'5" frame that he had that was necessary to overpower Tate Ratledge and Dylan Fairchild, to overpower those guys, it's going to show up in spots where we're going to be watching the game going like, man, I really wish Mills was in on that play.
Is this, I don't know this, so I'm asking you, is this going to be Gabe Rubio's first start?
I don't know that off the top of my head, but he has played significant minutes and he's an upperclassman. So this isn't again.
He's only played in 8 games. So those significant minutes had to come in some pretty big drop time.
No, he's been a rotational guy. Like he hasn't been just purely.
My point is when it's a close game, he's not seen a lot of action. Correct?
I don't believe that's the case. I don't think they rotate a lot of defensive linemen, so it's not like just purely, Rylie Mills is in there every single snap.
Well, regardless,
I also think he was banged up at the beginning of the year too, if I remember correctly.
Now let's just say hypothetically it's his second or third start, even if it is his first, regardless of what it is. His first start over.
Yeah, he hasn't started before. This is his first start.
So your first start is against Tate Ratledge.
Yeah.
Good luck. I mean, good luck. I mean, it doesn't matter who it is in the country. I mean, that's a perennial NFL guard that you're going up against in your first start. And to your point, you bring up probably the best point in all of this, and I didn't even think about it, and that's why I'm glad I got you on here. Depth. Like, depth is always an issue in these kinds of games, especially if Georgia wants – Joe, they ran the ball 60% more and when Stockton or Gunnar Stockton came in than they have all year. They ran the football. Joe, they ran 54 plays. They ran it 40 plus. Like, they hadn't done that all year. So now you're going to have to try to convince me that their game plan is not going to be trying to attack that. It's going to be interesting. But again, the production, the 7.5 sacks, it's a massive loss. You can't take that away. Yeah. But the number one thing for me, man, 61 games Rylie Mills has played in. That's you don't replace that. Like if you injected truth serum into Marcus Freeman and he says, "Tell me really about the Rylie Mills miss." I know for one thing he's going to say in there, in his own words, I can't replace the experience on the field. Nobody can. Nobody can. That's the big deal here.
The final thought on this. It doesn't even, for me, it doesn't even have anything to do with that sack production, the tackle for loss production that you're talking about. It's what he is, just this big-bodied mauler that he is on film. He's freeing up the linebackers. He's freeing up Howard Cross, who is the quick-footed 3-tech that is an impactful pass rusher. Like that, he was creating so much spillover effect. Having a big mauling presence like that is huge on a defense like Notre Dame's that has athletes all over the field. To what we're talking about here, Rubio does need to play well, and I'm trying to figure out. I've been texting with people closer that track Notre Dame a little bit closer than I do to find out like who is that next guy behind Rubio. It's been unclear because they haven't really turned to many other guys unless it's been in garbage time.
Going to be interesting to see. I just think that of all the positions besides quarterback and Jeremiah Love that you could have lost, this is against this opponent. It's probably the worst that you could have had in this current situation. Hopefully, Rylie Mills is able to bounce back. This absolutely stinks for him. It was an ACL, wasn't it?
Knee injury was what I saw, so I believe that's it. It's crazy because it looked like he just got like leg whipped. It didn't really look like it was anything that bad. And we watched the game, and they're saying like, oh, he walked off on his own power, and then you're like, oh, he'll be back.
I walked off.
I know that was the stupidest the thing that like we all forget.
Look, as someone who's gone through 2 ACL, like if I could hawk this big leg up here, I'd show you like the patella tendon graft. Like right here, brother. It hurts, man.
Yeah.
It hurts. You were making that face like you probably shouldn't put your big ass leg up here. But
no. It's like having torn a tendon. I tore my pec when I was playing.
It's not fun. Well, you can walk. I mean, there's so much structure around there, but it's just like you can't cut. You can't. It really stinks. That's why you guys need. Does Notre Dame have artificial turf?
They do. They switched to artificial turf. Well, they were the longest time were like super proud of their grass and everything, and I don't know why they switched to turf.
Everybody I know, man. Everybody I know. That stupid artificial turf. Okay.
BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.